Welcome to the Monday Monologue, and today we're going to talk about 300B, 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 300B. Everybody wants to talk about 300Bs. They're like the most hyped tube amp on the planet right now, and almost every email that I get when people first contact me, they're like, I want to buy a 300B amp, but I'm on a budget. But I want a 300B amp, because everybody's telling me a 300B is what I want. And I'm just really getting over the hype on this tube. And I'm not saying that it's not a good sounding tube, but it's a really difficult tube for it to sound good. And it's not cheap. And by that I mean the good 300B tubes are not inexpensive, but the main deal is the amplifier that you put them in really can't be a budget-oriented amplifier for it to make that tube sound good. And one of the things through all my testing on the different 300B amps I've worked on is unless the amplifier and the output transformers and all the parts that are in the amplifier are top shelf stuff, and specifically I haven't found any output transformers other than the ISO FC30 3.5 S2, 30 watt big tangos that actually work well, make decent power, have decent distortion profile with a no feedback 300B amp. You start putting feedback in them to try to compensate for using cheapo transformers, and then it doesn't sound like a 300B tube anymore. You lose the whole direct heated triode sound when you do that. And that was my main beef with like that R300, was to get it to perform even decently, they had to put just tons of global negative feedback in the circuit. When you pull the feedback loop out, it made crazy distortion, which is telling me transformers are junk and the circuit design is terrible. And again, I've gone down this route of trying to do budget 300B or low cost 300B bills. This was my latest one, and they've all been failures. And the common point is the output transformers. Basically the same exact circuit. Change the power supply a little bit to save some money there, and that hurt the performance. But the main thing was these output transformers, unless they're really, really high quality, you're not going to get good sound out of a 300B amp or a 300B tube. And there's no point in buying, I had somebody that bought like super expensive tubes for their R300. Bought some of those Western Electric new productions for $1,500 for a pair of them. And the amp still didn't sound good. To me, it didn't sound any different than it did using the Gold Lion tubes, which I've tested before, and they were like the bottom tier of the 300B tubes that I listened to. And so, I really was hoping that I could insert a 300B amplifier in a price tier that was equal to or maybe just a little more than my 2A3 amp. And that's not going to be possible, or I'm not going to do that. And that's one of the things I think I need to focus on, is only release stuff or produce stuff, sell things to people that I know are the best they can be at that price point. And I'm not going to make a subpar performing amplifier to fit a price bracket that people want to pay. There's already products in that price bracket or less that perform the same or maybe worse, but they're in that price bracket. If all you want to do is say, I've got a 300B amp to your club buddies or whatever your goal is. If you really want a good sounding amplifier, then you get a 2A3. It's going to have the same performance within a watt of what this makes, with less expensive tubes at a much lower price point with a simpler circuit, and it just sounds better. And honestly, my EL34 amp, even the standard transformer version, is going to sound better than a cost cutter version of a 300B amp. And that's just the reality of how this stuff works after trying all sorts of things to get there. And I'm hoping one of the things about this channel is I can do stuff and make mistakes so you don't have to. I went through at least a half dozen different output transformers on this amp chassis because this guy's not bolted down. I pulled this off, ran the wires out, had transformers sitting on the bench, and I tried several different ED cores that I had here. I tried the 5K musical power supplies that work great in my EL34 amp. Got these 3.5K 20 watters. I tried those Haybuer transformers that work fantastic in my 2A3 amp. I tried those Thermionic Labs transformers that I potted, hoping those might be a viable candidate, to compete with the ISO transformers. And none of them would make more than 6.5 watts without clipping. And put the tangos in, 8 watts. Just a more efficient transformer. It's got what a 300B tube likes. The amp feels or sounds effortless when you're listening to it, and it just feels strained when I listen to it with these transformers. It sounded strained when I was listening to it with those 25 watt ED cores that I originally had in it. Those transformers work great with a KT88 too. And I'm sure these will work fine with a lower powered amplifier as well. I'm interested to see how these guys work with a 2A3 tube. But probably going to stick with the Haybuer iron since I know that sounds really good. And it's like the soundstage just collapsed and the whole holographic sound that my nice 300B amp has, none of these budget ones sounded like that. And at the end of the day, that's what you guys are looking for, is a really nice sounding amplifier when you buy something from me or when you follow one of my videos. Now, if you want to get into 300B on a super budget, this is probably something that you could build and in the future realize, when I get my money saved up, I'll spend $1,000 and get some nicer transformers and I can upgrade it, and then I'll have a decent amplifier. And if I was going to do that, I would not do this single rail power supply. It wasn't that much more money to do the dual rail with the caps over by the power transformers like my last 300B video did. And that amplifier is one I'm going to build. The one that I did in my previous 300B build where I used the ISO iron. And anyway, I did learn something that these power transformers are promising. The 6.3 volt rail is still a little high. Matt's working on doing some tweaks to the winding to get that voltage down just a little bit, which will make the whole amplifier happier. They were like at 6.8 volts, which was a little higher than I would like to see on 6.3 volt tubes. I'm not one of those people that it's got to be 6.300 volts like some people are. 6.5 volts, even 6.6 volts doesn't freak me out. 6.8 volts is like, that's just cooking the tubes for no reason. So we're going to work on that. But it did simplify the build. I'm working for a solution like this to do in my future amps. I am also going to build some wood surround ones that have all ISO iron, and I'm going to show you that build with the next one that's on the deck for a customer that built their own chassis. Getting the fab work done on the top plate and got another set of those transformers ordered. But just so you know, a set of power, choke, and output transformers from ISO for that build is almost $2,000 just for the iron. And so it is what it is, guys. I mean, if you want quality, you're just going to have to save up your money and buy it. And this reminds me of my photography curve over the years. When I started out, I was trying to get into photography on a budget. and I was buying inexpensive cameras, and I kept thinking, I really want a Leica or maybe a Hasselblad, but they're just so expensive. I'm not going to spend that kind of money. I'm going to buy this other one because it's cheaper. And then I bought this one. And then I bought that one. And I was searching for like this holy grail camera without spending the money on what I knew was a quality camera. And I've enjoyed collecting cameras over the years, but my whole camera collection, when I look back on it, was in search of a holy grail camera that if I had just bought a nice Leica M2 or a Hasselblad 500 CM back in the 90s, late 80s, when I was really getting into photography, I probably wouldn't have bought all these other cameras, and none of them perform as well or just work or just as nice as those are. And I finally bought some, and I was like, man, I should have done this a long time ago. And I guess I'm saying that, so don't make the same mistake in your audio. I mean, if you really cherish having high quality audio to listen to, invest in something nice and don't settle for something cheap in hopes that that's going to be good enough, because I'm finding it just isn't. And it sacrifices, it's a subtle difference, but that subtlety is the difference between having a okay audio system and having something that you really enjoy, and you're not listening going, man, if it just had a little more, you're not there. And so don't do that. Anyway, that's kind of my rant today on 300B amps and just my getting tired of this just super hypeness that is coming out of people, other folks and stuff, just saying that, oh yeah, this amp sounds great because it's got a 300B tube in it. No, the amp should sound great no matter what tube it was designed around. And there's so many other tubes out there that, to me, are easier to work with and get really nice performance out of it. And I know I keep saying I love that 2A3 amp, but guys, that's what I listen to most of the time is my 2A3 amp with the Haybauer transformers. It just sounds so rich and lifelike. And anyway, I think I got my point across. So anyway, been catching up on my backlog of orders. I've got one more 2A3 amp to work on, and he said it's okay if I do that to the end of February. I've got a couple of color preamps. See, that's another product that I'm just super proud of. That color preamp sounds so good. And the same thing with my Phonostage. It just sounds fantastic. And I've sold enough of them and got enough people, replying after they've listened to them, just going, wow, this thing sounds unbelievable, that I know it's a good product. And so I don't want to compromise on my product line, building something, again, to meet a price point that I don't think deserves the Skunkie Design badge. That's going to kind of cover the Monday Monologue for this week. I am looking forward to going to the show down in Tampa. I'm going to Expona in April, so that's going to be fun. If you see me there, come over and say hi. Oh, did find some fun music, and I got a copy of this album from the used record store that was kind of mediocre shape. It had a lot of surface noise, but I knew the music sounded pretty cool. But it's the kind of music that really needs a dark background to really be able to, hear everything that's in it and to really get the vibe that was behind creating it. And when it came out, it was kind of a landmark album, and it was a very different kind of sound. And if you've never heard it, they just re-released Quincy Jones' Walking in Space, and it's just a fun album to listen to. It's very musical, melodic. It's got a lot of just riffs and just kind of fun things. You could tell folks are experimenting with new sounds and new ways of doing jazz, and give it a listen. You can try to stream it first if you like it. This new release of the vinyl sounds really nice, and they've got it at Acoustic Sounds. They have it on Amazon too, so check it out. And I also have got ordered, and I've heard good reviews about, there's a Frank Sinatra that just got re-released through Blue Note. I think Kevin Gray was part of the mastering of it. That's supposed to be really nice, and we'll report on that next week when it gets here. And still waiting on a roller from a new tape deck. Spoiler, I did get another tape deck and another tape head preamp. So we're head first down into that rabbit hole. So that's going to be some future videos. We're going to be doing more stuff on reel-to-reel tape. And yeah, I am just a little disappointed this didn't turn out better. I was really hopeful, but I think that's one of the things I need to learn from my mistakes, and it's not a loss when you figure out, hey, I tried this, and none of this worked. Here's what we need to be doing. And then I know that I haven't left something on the table, or that I'm spending money that is needlessly being spent. And I hope y'all appreciate that too. So, anyway, we will see you next week for the Monday Monologue.